John Leon Puerta. I am a fellow servant of Christ, and today I am joined by my brother in Christ, also my father-in-law,
Victor Hernandez.
That's what's up. Today we are wanting to go ahead and pretty much kick off things with this channel. We believe that it is truly important to be able to point out some things that are currently going on in our Southern Baptist Convention. There has been a lot of changes over the past couple of years that have raised a lot of red flags, and we want to be able to pretty much just help not only the people that would be listening to this, but hopefully our local churches to be educated about this stuff, understand what's going on, but not only that, but in hopes that there may be a change in our convention to actually change ultimately the direction of where it's heading right now. So,
especially because we are going to be heading down to Anaheim here next month. You know, our church is sending the full complement that we're allowed to send. So super important for us to make sure that we do our homework, make sure that we're going ready to vote, our conscience, our convictions, our understanding of the cultural, situation. We don't want to blindly go.
Right.
We are obviously going to be already going with certain biases, right, in regards to doctrine, and that's what we mean by voting our conscience, right? What do we believe in certain areas?
Yeah.
But that's why it's so important for us to do this, to understand, and for the church that we're representing, so that they understand that the members that they're sending, are they voting according to what our church believes?
Right, exactly.
So real quick, if you don't mind, some things that come to mind, like what are we looking for in regards to voting for the SBC presidency? What are we looking for? Me personally, I was thinking three things. Do they understand the SBC, right, and how it works? Have they shown themselves to be a leader? And do they understand the current culture climate?
Yeah.
And that I think that's important because that affects the overall mission of the SBC, right? Which is sending missionaries and the seminaries, right? Sending out pastors and planting churches.
Right, yeah.
So if those are the main missions of the church, is that affected by these cultural things that are going on? I think it is. So that's why I think that's important.
Exactly. I mean, you don't want to hire a doctor who is, not up to date of the most recent diseases and things like that.
Ooh.
He's got to be well educated of that. He's got to know so that way he can handle those things ultimately. So that's definitely what we want to talk about. So we're going to be covering pretty much the candidates that we have as of right now. We're seeing that there's...
Which is two out of the three.
Yeah, today we're going to be talking about 2 out of the 3. There's 3 total candidates. We have Robin Hadaway, Bart Barber, and Tom Askell. We're going to be speaking on Robin Hadaway today and also Bart Barber. And all we would ask also is just prayers as well for not only our messengers, but also all the messengers that are going to be going, that are going to be able to be in Anaheim in June, just for wisdom, for understanding, and, discernment over all this. And so... yeah, I mean, I guess we'll go ahead and jump right in. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about pretty much Robin Hadaway. We did our research, got a little bit of information on him. I'm going to say Robin was a little bit hard to be able to find information, mainly because there's not a lot about him, which can be a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. Yeah. So ultimately, I want to kind of hit a couple of points, really just, background about him, his service to Christ, how he came to know God, and also what his views are right now at the SBC. So I guess as a kick things off, Robin Hadaway, he was actually born in Nashville, Tennessee. He actually grew up most of his time in Tallahassee, Florida. And later on, whenever he graduated, he moved to Memphis, Tennessee with his family. He graduated from the University of Memphis. Later on, went to the Air Force, which was actually kind of cool. He was he was stationed in Florida, Texas, and Alaska, and Nevada. Later on, whenever he was in college, he was actually... convicted of sin through a fellow college member, was shared the gospel, came to know Christ that way, and so he later had the calling of pretty much being able to go into missions ultimately. He had worked for the International Mission Board and was in places such as Africa. He was in South America for a certain amount of time. Was actually spent most of his time in, I'm sorry if I mispronounce this, Tanzania. I think that's how you say it. Or
Sounds right.
I think that's what it is. That's where he spent most of his time. But pretty much later on after he had pretty much, but before then he actually went to missions. He had graduated from seminary where he got his doctorate of ministry from Golden Gate Baptist Theological Seminary. And he also went to Dallas Theological Seminary as well. So definitely he has, he's got that proof of, Southern Baptist. I guess that's seal right there.
Yeah.
So he's got a lot of background right there. But most of his time was spent actually in missions. He had been with the International Mission Board for 18 years due to some complications really with his daughter, some health issues. He had actually come back to the States, and that's where he had decided to be the professor of missions at Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. He was the professor there for about 18 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah,
That's good.
Long time right there. And then 6 years total as a pastor. Most places such as California really is one of the areas that he had been a pastor for. So,
And I want to say he's out in Oceanside, right?
yeah, so currently right now.
Which is our old stomping grounds.
Yeah, there you go.
Right
yeah.
north of San Diego.
Exactly. Yeah, he's currently a church member at New Song Community Church, Oceanside, California. So that's just a little background about him. So there's definitely a lot of history right there, in the faith, ultimately, being able to serve Christ. So it's definitely a blessing, and that kind of ties in a lot, with ultimately just his overall views of the Southern Baptist Convention. So most of this stuff really, that I've, been able to dig up from him was from interviews and things like that. Because like I mentioned, there's not a lot of stuff that Robin has out there, just trying to Google him up, you only get a couple of sites, his biography on Midwestern. But ultimately, he does see that there is issues in the Southern Baptist Convention. Ultimately, he sees that there has been a loss of joy. To summarize it, really, ultimately, the way that he puts it is 2 words: missions and experience is what he's pretty much summarizing a lot of this. He believes that the Southern Baptists are still one of the most leading people in evangelism in the United States. He loves how it is that we are able to pretty much plant churches, not only in the United States but overseas as well. But he also believes that pretty much through offering his wisdom and experience in the mission field, may be able to help ultimately with the convention, because he wants us to, what he says, remember the mission, of the Southern Baptist Convention.
Man, that's a great motto.
Yeah.
That's a great motto, but I think that's where I struggle with, because we're talking about the mission is missions, but what if that missionary factory is broken?
Exactly. If we are to make missions or create missions and stuff like that, we first gotta create ultimately pastors and stuff for those, or just people educated on that. And that's something that it seems like Robin's a little out of the loop of. One thing is a couple things that I pointed out on here were when he was in regards to critical race theory, he actually, from his words, believes critical race theory views everything by grace, is what he had said.
What do you mean?
That's pretty much all he said. I'm assuming that he sees it as some sort of graceful thing in a way. I'm not exactly sure. He didn't really specify in it, but he says that he teaches worldviews pretty much, in his classes, and really had shared a lot of experience, going through, the civil rights movement, how he noticed that there was a lot of things wrong with that, with colored people having to have different water fountains and things like that. But he pretty much sees it as a cultural problem of the day, but we have to be careful not to be seen as sympathetic to the problem in a way.
Yeah.
So
a very neutral stance.
Very neutral stance, but also not very much seeming to say much other than that. Which there's a lot more that plays into critical race theory right now, especially what the roots are of it ultimately. The fact that it comes, it's a root of Marxism, of course, and really it's ultimately just worldly philosophy, would you say? So it doesn't seem it really makes much sense. So that's really all he's touched base on.
Now I want to say I've seen clips of the interview he did with is it
Bobby Gilstrap?
Yes, that one. Did you watch that?
Yeah, he kind of sees it also like, he compares it almost to school. How in school you learn about evolution. It's accepted in school, but you don't believe it. But it's like,
Yeah, you know what? I remember him saying that. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like, well, yeah, but this is school. This is, this is truly, this is the Christian faith right here. So
Right.
it's not the same thing. Just because it's something that is teaching, it doesn't necessarily help us at all.
And I want to say, I know we're not talking about Tom Ascol today, but Tom Ascol was asked the same question, and I think when he was wrapping up his his answer, he did say, like, we should teach CRT, but not as a tool to be used.
Right.
So
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
so I'm assuming that that Robin would take that closer, to that stance.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it seems like. He's very much neutral about all this. And not only that, but he also was asked through his interview with Bobby Gilstrap pretty much what his thoughts were, the fact that it's being taught in our seminaries today. And he said he doesn't believe that, critical race theory is actually being taught at Midwestern. He says...
So that's a miss on his part, right?
Yeah,
there.
exactly. He says that, because he's the person, he said that since he teaches worldviews and world religions, he believes that he would probably be one of the main people to know if that truly was being taught there.
Yeah, and I don't want to get sidetracked too much, but I think that's where a lot of brothers are missing it,
Yeah.
to where I think a lot of us would agree this is a worldview issue, right? But they're not understanding that the CRT is flowing into all subjects.
Right.
So if I'm part of the department that maybe is part of the apologetics area,
Yeah.
and we're teaching in a certain way, that doesn't mean that it's not leaking in
Exactly.
through other areas.
Right,
So that's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, it's something that has to be, we have to be aware of it, and praise God for our elders here at our church, because ultimately, prior to, I guess 2018 or so, I was totally clueless about what CRT was, and it was really through them bringing that to us, kind of teaching us that, really helped sharpen our minds on it. So anytime it is that you see that starting to creep in, whether it's through, other fellow, faithful brothers and stuff like that are now starting to kind of teach that, it's like, whoa, that's a red flag right there.
Yeah.
So just that alone, especially because I feel like critical race theory is a really big issue right now in the Southern Baptist Convention. The fact that it's just he seems very, vague in his understanding, and more seems on the side of he doesn't really know much other than, like he says, his experience of it.
Yeah. Has he mentioned anything on the other big subjects going on right now in the SBC?
Really, other than that, the other big things that he's pretty much mentioned has really been a summary of that. Is like all he kind of has gone back to has been, this is definitely a heart problem that we're having right now. Our spiritual state of the SBC,
Which is all true.
yeah,
But it doesn't stop there.
exactly.
Yeah.
He believes that we need a revival, from all the other stuff that we've pretty much talked about, and like I said, focus on missions is what he's pretty much summarized. And he thinks that being able to pretty much, he does see, though, that things, things have been implemented that are political, but it believes it's necessary to be able to pretty much make us more conservative, is what he's, explained. But another big thing that kind of was brought up, the whole Tom Buck situation with his wife and everything.
Yeah.
He was also asked about that during his interview with Bobby Gilstrap. He didn't really, and I believe it was a little wise of him, because he kind of made it very obvious. It's like, I don't know what exactly is the truth behind all this, mainly because he had just recently, found out. He had joined social media not that long ago. I think he said it was like a couple weeks ago that he had just joined social media when that interview came out. So he doesn't really know exactly the details behind what was going on, other than he feels sorry for both, Tom Buck and Willie Rice, and he doesn't know really who's at fault, and doesn't, he didn't really want to take sides ultimately.
I mean, it sounds like the brother's done great work. The Lord's used them in great ways, man, especially in regards to missions.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it might not be a good choice in regards to, moving the convention forward in today's climate.
Yeah, it's good concerns that he has ultimately, and honestly, I'd rock with that. That's definitely stuff that we shouldn't, we do need to change the way that we're going. We need to have, what he says, more joy in the SBC, but you have to know the root problems too as well. You need to know what's going on, behind the scenes too, to be able to change that, because what's, like I said, the way I see it, it's very, very much that he's not aware of this stuff, and that can be good and bad in the sense that it's good the fact that he's not aware of it, because it doesn't show, from a lot of speculations that he's involved in maybe some I guess schemes or something like that to try to make, the convention go to a certain direction, but also bad at the same time, because how do we know that this brother won't be able to, be misled or maybe in a way deceived to being able to continue the stuff that we're seeing right now? But yeah, that's, other than that, that's pretty much all I have on, Robin Hadaway. I was very honored to be able to actually shoot him an email, and he responded immediately within a day. Actually,
That's
this
great.
morning, and it was pretty much just being able to let him know, hey, that we're in prayer for you. We're also looking forward to seeing how things go, for the next convention. And I had asked for a little bit more details, really, on his testimony, and he was able to send me a lot of good resources on that as well. So I definitely appreciated that. But yeah, that's pretty much what I was able to get much on Robin Hadaway.